Matthew chapter 14. At that time, Herodes, the district ruler, heard the report about Yeshua and said to his servants, "This is Yohanan the Immerser. He is risen from the dead, and that's why these mighty powers are at work in him." For Herodes had arrested Yohanan, bound him, and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For Yohanan had said to him, "It is not right for you to have her." And wishing to kill him, he feared the crowd, because they held him as a prophet. But as Herodias' birthday was being held, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herodes. So he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked, and she, being urged by her mother, said, "Give me here the head of Yohanan the Immerser on a dish." And the sovereign was sad, but because of the oaths and the guests, he commanded it be given, and sent and beheaded Yohanan in prison, and his head was brought on a dish and given to the girl. But she brought it to her mother, and his taught ones came and took away the body and buried it, and went and reported it to Yeshua. Now, when Yeshua heard it, he withdrew from there by a boat to a deserted place by himself. And when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. And when Yeshua came out, he saw a large crowd and was moved with compassion for them and healed their sick. And when evening came, his taught ones came to him, saying, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Dismiss the crowds, so that they might go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Yeshua said to them, "They do not need to go away. Give them to eat yourselves." And they said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." And commanding the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to the heaven, he blessed and broke, and gave the loaves to the taught ones, and the taught ones gave to the crowds. And all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up the pieces left over, 12 baskets filled. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. And immediately Yeshua made his taught ones enter into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And having dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening had come, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, agitated by the waves, for the wind was against it. And in the 4th watch of the night, Yeshua went to them walking on the sea. And when the taught ones saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "Is it a phantom?" And from fear they cried. But immediately Yeshua spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." And Kepha answered him and said, "Master, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." And when Kepha had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Yeshua. But when he saw that the wind was strong, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Master, save me." And immediately Yeshua stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, "Oh, you of little belief, why did you doubt?" And when they came into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat came and did bow to him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of Elohim. And having passed over, they came to the land of Gennesar. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all that surrounding country and brought to him all who were sick and begged him to let them only touch the tzitzit of his garment. And as many as touched it were healed. Marcos, or Mark, chapter 6. And he went away from there and came to his own country, and his taught ones followed him. And Sabbath having come, he began to teach in the congregation, and many who heard him were astonished, saying, Where did he get all this? And what wisdom is this which is given to him, that such miracles are done through his hands? Is this not the carpenter, the son of Miriam, the brother of Yaakov, and Joseph, and Yehuda, and Shimon? And are not his sisters here with us? And they stumbled in him. And Yeshua said to them, A prophet is not appreciated except in his own country and among his own relatives and in his own house. And he was unable to do any miracles there, except he laid his hands on a few sick ones and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he was going around among the villages teaching. And he called the 12 near and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over unclean spirits. And he instructed them to take none at all for the journey except a staff. No bag, no bread, no copper in their money belts, but to wear sandals and not to wear 2 undergarments. And he said to them, Wherever you enter into a house, stay there until you leave that place. And any place that does not receive you or listen to you, when you leave there, shake the dust under your feet as a witness against them. Truly I say to you, it shall be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. And they went out and proclaimed that men should repent. And they were casting out many demons, and they were anointing with oil many who were sick, and they were healing them. And sovereign Herodes heard, for his name had become well known, and he said, Yohanan the Immerser has been raised from the dead, and because of this, these powers are at work in him. Others said, He is Eliyahu, and others said, He's a prophet, like one of the prophets. But when Herodes heard, he said, This is Yohanan, whom I beheaded. He's been raised from the dead. For Herodes himself had sent and seized Yohanan and bound him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because he had married her. For Yohanan had said to Herodes, It's not right for you to have your brother's wife. So Herodias held a grudge against him and wished to kill him, but was unable. For Herodes feared Yohanan, knowing that he was a righteous and set-apart man, and he protected him. And when he heard him, he was much perplexed, yet heard him gladly. And a suitable day came when Herodes, on his birthday, gave a feast for his great men and the high officers and the chief men of Galilee. And when the daughter of Herodias herself came in and danced, and pleased Herodes and those who sat with him, the sovereign said to the girl, Ask whatever you wish, and I shall give it to you. And he swore to her, Whatever you ask me, I shall give you up to half my reign. And she went out and asked her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of Yohanan the Immerser. And coming in immediately with haste to the sovereign, she asked, saying, I wish that you give me at once the head of Yohanan the Immerser on a dish. And the sovereign, becoming deeply grieved because of the oaths and because of those who sat with him, did not wish to refuse her. And the sovereign straightway sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went in and beheaded him in prison, and brought his head on a dish and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. When the taught ones heard of it, they came and took away his dead body and laid it in a tomb. And the emissaries gathered to Yeshua and reported to him all, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a little." For there were many coming and going, and they didn't even have time to eat. And they went away to a lonely place in the boat by themselves. But they saw them going, and many recognized him and ran there on foot from all the cities and came before them and came together to him. And having gone out, Yeshua saw a large crowd and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. And he began to teach them many matters. And the hour grew late. His taught ones came to him and said, "This is a lonely place. Now the hour is late. Send them away so that they go to the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread, since they have no food to eat." But he, answering, said to them, "You give them to eat." And they said to him, "Should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them to eat?" Then he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5, and 2 fishes. And he ordered them to make them all sit down in groups on the green grass. And they sat down in groups, in hundreds and in 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, looking up to the heaven, he blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to his taught ones to set before them. And the 2 fishes he divided among them all. And all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 baskets filled with pieces, also from the fishes. Now, those who ate the loaves were about 5,000 men. And immediately he made his taught ones enter into the boat and to go before him to the other side to Bethsaida, while he was dismissing the crowd. And having sent them away, he went away to the mountain to pray. And when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. And seeing them straining at rowing, the wind against them, at about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and he wished to pass them by. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a phantom and cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he spoke to them and said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." And he went up to them into the boat, and the wind ceased. And they were exceedingly amazed in themselves and marveled, for they did not understand about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. And having passed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and drew to shore. And when they came out of the boat, he was immediately recognized, and all that neighborhood ran about and began to carry about on beds those who were sick to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or the country, they were laying the sick in the marketplaces and begged him to let them touch, if only, the tzitzi of his garment. And as many as touched him were healed. And Luke 9, verses 1 through 17. And having called his 12 taught ones together, he gave them power and authority over all demons and to heal diseases. and he sent them to proclaim the reign of Elohim and to heal the sick. And he said to them, Take no matter at all for the journey, neither staffs, nor bag, nor bread, nor silver, and neither have two undergarments. And whatever house you enter, stay there and go out from there. As for those who do not receive you, when you go out of that city, shake off the dust from your feet as witness against them. And going out, they went through the villages, bringing the good news and healing everywhere. And Herodes, the district ruler, heard of all that was done by him and was perplexed, because it was said by some that Johanan had been raised from the dead, and by some that Eliyahu had appeared, and by others that one of the old prophets had risen up. And Herodes said, Johanan I have beheaded. But who is this of whom I hear such reports? And he was seeking to see him, Yeshua. And the emissaries, when they had returned, related to Yeshua all that they had done. And he took them, and they withdrew by themselves to a city called Bethsaida. And when the crowds knew it, they followed him, and having received them, he was speaking to them about the reign of Elohim, and healed those who had need of healing. And as the day began to decline, the 12 came and said to him, Send the crowd away, that going into the surrounding villages and country, they might lodge and get food, because here we're in a lonely place. But he said to them, You give them to eat. And they said, We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fishes, unless we go and buy food for all these people. For there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his taught ones, Make them sit down in groups of 50. And they did so, and made them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, having looked up to the heaven, he blessed and broke them and gave them to the taught ones to set before the crowd. So they all ate and were satisfied, and 12 baskets of the broken pieces were picked up by them.